New Gordon City. It's not the biggest city, but there's something convenient about having everything you need close by. Between North Point Bay, the boardwalk, Kelter Wood, which is actually pretty beautiful this time of year, New Gordon City is almost a perfect place to call home. If you're a human. Most people are too young to remember, but there was a time when mythicals weren't able to just walk around. My dad used to tell me stories about what it was like for people like us, having to hide who we are, what we are. It's definitely gotten better, but things are a little tense right now. People are afraid of us, afraid of what we can do, and I don't blame them. They only know about the stuff that we want them to know about. So honestly, what do you expect them to do? One slip up and all their fears about what they think's going on out there are gonna come true, and they would fucking riot. So for now, vampires, werewolves, elves. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Keep your mouth shut about the rest, and you won't piss anyone off. I wish I could tell you that that's all you need to know to stay alive in this city, but that's just not fucking true anymore. This is the setting our party finds themselves in. Hello and welcome to Media Dungeon. This is Dakota, your DM, and welcome to the setting and prologue video for our new show, Mythandmurder. So the first thing that you've probably gathered about this campaign is that this is not a normal D&D campaign. We are using 5th edition D&D, but other than that, this is not in a medieval setting. In this world, mythical creatures, cryptids, legends, fairy tales, all of these things are true. At least most of them. But these creatures have done a pretty decent job of remaining hidden from normal people. The only mythical creatures that are known by the general public are vampires, werewolves, and elves. There are some humans that know about magic, but other than that, the normal average human knows very little about the things that actually go on in this city. I don't want to get into much more than that because I don't want to spoil anything that might come up in the campaign. So I'll let you guys learn more as you go on from actually listening to the show. But with the rest of this video, I want to go through a quick recap of what happened during the first arc of the campaign. There was a murder in New Gordon City. A woman named Lauren McCoy. She was found in North Point Park, and this murder scene was being investigated by a bunch of different police in the city, but specifically the important person to know here is one of the players, Detective Sammy Friedson, played by Julia. Now, we have taken some liberties with the myths and legends for some of the creatures that we have in this campaign, but basically, Sammy is a demon of sorts that is capable of tracking down murderers using the taste of their victim's blood. But something strange has been going on with her powers. She's been tracking this target, and after tracking for a few miles and getting closer and closer, the blip in her radar, so to speak, tends to dissipate or become harder to focus on. There's something getting in the way of her being able to do that. She speaks to her workplace acquaintance. His name is Captain Wallace, and he's starting to worry about what the public is going to think about mythicals with all these murders happening. So Sammy continues to look into this murderer, checking in with Captain Wallace from time to time, until about a week passes. Sammy has run into nothing but dead ends at this point, and Lauren McCoy's funeral is taking place. And everyone comes back to the McCoy's church, and there's a small service, and friends and family gather together. At this point, this is when we are introduced to another player character, Sebastian, played by Rosie. Sebastian is a fae, specifically a gargoyle, and he is the protector of the people who worship at this church. And the only person who attends this church that knows about Sebastian and what he really is Gabriel, the preacher or priest of this church. Sebastian and Sammy run into each other a bit at this party, but they don't really talk a whole lot. A few other people show up at this wake who are important to our plot. Benjamin, played by Kylie, and Sean, played by Max. Benjamin used to be a wizard, trying to work on different projects to grab the attention of the Enclave, which is a school/organization of normal humans who know about magic and are capable of using it. Well, one day during some experiments, Benjamin accidentally got himself stuck in a construct that him and a few of his other colleagues had created. And Sean is kind of a hybrid creature, somewhere between like a ghost rider and a headless horseman. So all of the churchgoers leave the wake. They split up and they head off into two different directions. The first direction is towards a bar known as the Goldilocks, and the younger crowd heads to this place called the Blue Smoke Lounge. Benjamin gets to the Goldilocks and causes a bunch of trouble almost immediately with the owner of the bar. His name is Arthur, and two of his friends, Colin and Teddy. Sean comes in and starts acting suspicious as well, and a huge fight breaks out. Sean and Benjamin find out fairly quickly that Arthur is also a mythical. Sean is able to talk his way out of the situation, making it sound like it was just a big misunderstanding, and they leave, hoping to not cause any more trouble with Arthur. Sebastian, meanwhile, in the Blue Smoke Lounge, is approached by a man. Finn has been trying to get Sebastian drunk and open up to have a conversation with him. Finn gets a little intoxicated and eventually asks Sebastian to, maybe they want to go somewhere else and hang out somewhere else. They've been in this lounge for a few hours now and it's starting to get stale. Sebastian decides that, he's got some other things that he wants to do, but he will at least walk Finn home. And Sebastian realizes that Finn seems to be trying to lead him towards North Point Park. There's just something about it. Sebastian is very uncomfortable and decides that he's going to skip out. Sebastian calls Sammy, tells her what's going on. Sammy immediately heads to him. They meet up and, using Sammy's abilities, once again try to track down the murderer of Lauren McCoy and the others. And her powers seem to be leading her in the exact direction that Sebastian saw Finn walk off in. They follow this lead all the way out to North Point Bay. They get out of their car, they're walking around on the beach, and they can see a man's footprints leading through the sand and into the water. Meanwhile, Benjamin and Sean receive strange texts about someone trying to hire Sean and his Dark Horse courier service, and Sean hires Benjamin on as muscle. It's getting pretty late at this point, and Sammy and Sebastian are called by Elizabeth, Lauren's mother. Peter is missing, the father of Lauren, and Elizabeth is starting to get worried. So Sammy and Sebastian both go to speak with Elizabeth. They find out that Peter is a vampire, and they also find out that Lauren had been doing some fairly dangerous things before she was murdered, specifically meeting with an unknown individual and trying to buy medication for her grandmother who is very sick. Medication that they can't really afford and that they can't go through the system to get because they are unregistered mythicals. Sammy and Sebastian gather as much information as they can. They search through the night until they find Peter. Peter has been lynched in a back alleyway. He is hanging from a metal pipe and he has been staked. They are able to cut him down and remove the stake, and they know that as long as he gets some blood and rests with that stake out, he should come to. So they take him back to his home and are able to nurse him back to health pretty quickly using a drug known as synth, which is synthetic blood that was created by the city/government officials to give out to vampires for regular feeding that wouldn't involve them having to feed off of living creatures. At this point, it's the next day. Benjamin and Sean receive a phone call. This phone call is from the Sacred Heart Hospital in New Garden City, and they have a blood transport that they need someone to deliver because there has been a horrible accident. Now, it's important to say that this is organic blood, not synth. So the hospital wanted to hire an outside source who had some muscle and would be capable of defending the cargo to head to the lab, pick up the blood, and bring it to the hospital, and to be very careful because the synth blood in the city is kind of on a shortage right now, and the last shipment is a few days late. So there are a lot of vampires in the city that are going very hungry. Benjamin and Sean are not afraid of a fight, and that is exactly what they get because they get attacked by some vampires. 3 vampires in an armored truck, dressed a lot like Sean, basically just to cover up as much of their skin as possible from the sun. Sean and Benjamin are able to fend off the vampires, and this armored truck gets flipped over. And then after that, something happened. Something that to this day I still don't understand why it happened, but it did. Benjamin ripped the hand off of one of the vampires. Don't know why. He kept it. Sammy is called by Captain Wallace to the scene of the turned over armored truck. Sebastian secretly follows her to the scene. Sammy is looking into this flipped over armored truck, and then a man approaches her on the other side of the police tape, and it's Finn. Sammy doesn't know Finn yet, but her powers immediately start going off and tell her that she is looking directly at the murderer of Lauren McCoy and all the other victims of the North Point murders. She cannot contain herself, and she partakes in a bit of police brutality and beats him down to the ground and handcuffs him. He threatens to drop his glamour and kill everyone here. A bunch of other police officers show up and are like, Sammy, what the fuck are you doing? She says, I know for a fact that he is the murderer of Lauren McCoy. He's under arrest. I'm taking him to the precinct right now. She throws him to the back of her car and they drive off in the opposite direction of where the precinct is. She drives to a place called Kelter Wood, the most secluded location that she can think of. And she drags him out of her car and starts trying to get him to talk. He doesn't get super far into his weird psychotic manifesto before she's like, that's it, I'm gonna kill him. So she goes to attack him. Finn decides to run. He starts running into the woods, and that's when he realizes that Sebastian had been following this whole time because Sebastian fucking spears him into the ground. Finn at some point loses his glamour. His glamour is shattered from their combat, and he takes the form of a man from the waist up and a serpent shark-like creature from the waist down. And then eventually, because of all of the commotion, a woman comes barreling at this conflict from within Kelter Wood, gets between them and Finn, and she starts trying to convince them to stop this because if normal people see this happening, they're going to go ballistic. And if Sammy and Sebastian keep acting stupid like this, they're going to start a fucking war. Sammy does not listen and puts a bullet in Finn's head. The woman that had approached Sammy and Sebastian is pretty pissed off at the situation, but decides to help them move the body further into the woods so no one sees it. Her name is Raina. Raina leads the group into Kelter Wood to a ranger station where they meet Charlie, a man who seems to be very interested in the fact that they were able to kill a knock, which is what Raina identifies Finn to be. And Sammy decides to give Sean and Benjamin a call because they're in a tight spot and they need someone to move a body. Sean and Benjamin decide to head up to Kelter Wood to help Sammy with her problem. The party isn't sure if Charlie is a human or if he's a mythical. All they know is that he seems to have a hard time controlling his temper. He never loses it while the party is there, but Raina seems to be trying to help him stay calm, especially when the next thing happens. The whole party is now together in one place, and it takes maybe a few seconds for them to start talking about how they're going to mulch a body. And that's when a poof of black feathers enters the room, and through this cloud out steps a man. He's giving off a bit of a punk vibe, and he has a raven sitting on his shoulder. This man doesn't introduce himself to the party, but makes it very clear that he's been sent here by someone very important who the party has grabbed the attention of. And this person wants to help them out of this sticky situation, and all they have to do is say that he is allowed to take the body. They identify this man as a fae, and they are really worried about making deals with fae. Eventually the party talks and they decide to give the body to this man. Sammy speaks with Charlie and Raina for a while, learning more about them. And eventually, at some point, the conversation of vampires comes up because they're worried about what the city's going to think about all of these murders, and that they most likely think that it's vampires. And Charlie seems to agree with this notion because he says that the vampires have been just doing whatever they want whenever they want, and he seems to be pointing the finger at new management. Sammy finds out that the new leader of the vampires is a man named Victor. Raina, being a fae, decides that the party should speak with her father, Gira, who is the protector of Kelterwood. And this whole thing has now been mixed up into fae politics. So there is going to be an accord. These people are fae, and they have arrived from all over the nearby area. Among these people is Gira, who is actually very charming and sweet normally, but when it comes to fae and their traditions, he is very strict. And to Sean and Benjamin's surprise, Arthur arrives with Colin and Teddy and a bunch of goblins. Sebastian is asked to speak for the group, being the only member of the party who is a fae also. They speak about who this mysterious man might be because they're worried about a mysterious fae showing up in the territory, taking promises and doing favors and stuff like that. Gira seems to think that this man may or may not be involved with a group of fae known as the 12 Brothers. He doesn't know for sure, and he's going to look into it. The group also takes time to discuss how bad things are going when it comes to relations between mythicals and humans. And the conversation moves fairly quickly to that of a family known as the Von Cross. The Von Cross are a very old family. They are a long line of people who make money off of slaughtering mythicals. But they are very much so vigilantes and are extremely dangerous to all mythicals. They gather all of this information from Charlie, but that's basically all he knows about the Von Cross. He's never actually met them. He's basically just seen them on TV during late night infomercial type situations. So the accord splits. The party leaves the ranger station, but Sammy, there's still some information that doesn't sit right with her. The information that Lauren went out to North Point Park that night to meet someone to buy illegal drugs from someone. She does some investigative work and finds out that these drugs have come from a very large super shopping mall in the middle of the city. Benjamin heads back to the storage unit just to get some sleep. He is not in a great place after the fight with the vampires. Sammy goes inside and kind of scopes out the area. She finds an Employee of the Year wall, and she spots one person that she recognizes. Charlie from the ranger station is on one of these plaques. Most of the plaques around his are of the man that she thinks was involved in the drug deal, an elven man named Brad. But she thinks that it might be a bad idea if she does it, so she sends Sean in to speak with him. Sean finds out fairly quickly, however, that Brad was the one sending him mysterious text messages because their last courier, the man that they had working for them to take part in this drug deal with Lauren, has gone missing. And they are fairly certain that he ran off with all of the money and all of the pharmaceuticals, screwing over Brad and anyone else that was involved in the deal. Brad and two of the night shift security guards, Jeremy and Dave, they began getting very, very paranoid and suspicious of Sean until eventually they attack him. Sammy and Sebastian make their way to Sean's aid. They're able to fairly quickly defeat Brad, Dave, and Jeremy, handcuff them, sit them down in this back alleyway, and then they receive a very strange text. A text from Benjamin saying that he was not able to make it to the storage unit because he was picked up by a group of men in a van. Sammy decides to stay with Brad, Dave, and Jeremy, waiting for the cops to arrive. So Sebastian and Sean go to find Benjamin. Benjamin and these men arrive at this forested area that is surrounded by a large metal gate. One of these men walks up to the buzzer, starts talking to someone on the intercom, the gates open, and they walk down this lane in through the woods and come up to this manor. They enter the manor, and Benjamin is led up some stairs and to a mahogany door. And that is the first arc of Mythandmurder. I am super sorry if this video was extremely long. I tried my best to cut it down in post, so if it's still super long, I apologize. This has been Dakota, your DM from Media Dungeon, and I will see you on the next episode of Myth and Murder.